The Hillsborough River is one of Florida's natural treasures, emerging into existence at its birthplace in the Green Swamp, gaining the strength and volume from Crystal Springs to conclude its 55-mile-long, winding and scenic journey that eventually ends in downtown Tampa. Thousands of residents and visitors alike come into contact with the Hillsborough River every day, most in the downtown area where several historic bridges cross over the waterway as it approaches Hillsborough Bay. Despite such a heavy human presence today upon this section of the river, most are unlikely, however, to fully appreciate the rich and fascinating heritage of past generations and the human connections to the river they forged along these final stretches of the Hillsborough as it empties into the bay. Before European contact, Native American groups such as the Timucua and the Tocobaga lived among these shores here. Evidence of their occupation existed in the form of large burial mounds and shell middens near the mouth of the river where resources such as oysters and fish were once very abundant. Indeed, the oyster beds once found here were some of the best in all of Florida, up until at least the beginning of last century, when T.J. Shaw's Oyster House provided fresh oysters to Tampa's growing population. The arrival of the first European explorers to the area in 1528 is also commemorated on the inscribed boulder that was erected along the banks of the river in 1928 at Henry B. Plant Park, just below the Kenedy Street Bridge. While the first Spanish explorers did not actually set foot here, famed explorer Hernando de Soto is believed to have landed nearby in 1539, beginning a colonial period that eventually led to the demise of the indigenous populations in the region. During these early contact years, the Hillsborough River was an important waterway that colonizers used to travel upriver in search of fresh water and trees suitable to repair their ships. The area along the river near present-day downtown Tampa was also the site of Fort Brooke during the early years of Florida's establishment as a new United States territory. Constructed in 1824, the fort, which stood where Tampa Convention Center is today, established a protecting military presence for the area in the uncertain days of Florida's early statehood. Perhaps the most visible reminder of Tampa's more recent past along the banks of the Hillsborough comes from the stunning presence of the shining stainless steel minarets of what is now the University of Tampa. Listed as a National Historic Landmark, the exotic Moorish construction of the famed Tampa Bay Hotel built in 1888 by railroad magnate Henry B. Plant reminds all of the city's grand historic legacy along the banks of the Hillsborough River. Other visible reminders still around today include the historic bridges in the downtown area that commuters cross daily. Long before there were any bridges across this section of the Hillsborough River, pioneering travelers had to board a ferry to cross from one bank to another. The Jackson Street Ferry, owned by Jesse Hayden, operated in the 1880s by utilizing a hand-drawn steel cable to pull the floating barge across the river, carrying horses and supplies back and forth between Hyde Park and downtown. Then, in 1889, the first bridge across the section of the river was constructed. The Lafayette Street Bridge was a swing bridge which swung open by pivoting around a central point to open 2 lanes of river traffic and provided crossing for people, horses, buggies, and eventually streetcars during a period when Tampa was rapidly growing. This bridge was then replaced in 1913 by the larger, stronger drawbridge that eventually was renamed the Kenedy Street Bridge in 1963 in honor of President John F. Kennedy, who passed over it just a week before that fateful day of his assassination. Other historic bridges here include the Cass Street Bridge, the Laurel Street Bridge, which was formerly the Fortune Street Bridge, and the last bridge before the bay, the Platt Street Bridge. All of these elements of Tampa's past are just a small collection of the interesting and meaningful reminders that the Hillsborough River has been part of this region's identity and heritage from long before Europeans first landed in the bay in 1528, all the way up to the present day. The human connections to the river here include Native American groups, Spanish and English explorers and settlers, and eventually industrious Floridians, including the large immigrant populations that proudly helped to build the city of Tampa into a shining star of the South. And while it may be true that after the riverfront industry declined, for many years Tampa did not value its river location or appreciate its great potential, today the river is once more at center stage as part of the urban revitalization downtown, and as a result, it is shining like never before.